This podcast was brought to you by Dragon Shield. Use code PLAYTOWIN5 at the affiliate link down below for 5% off to help support the show.
Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Tyler.
And this week is a very important week because it is the Ixalan, Return to Ixalan, Lost Caverns of Ixalan set review.
Dinosaurs, vampires, merfolk,
Jurassic Park,
is it just those three?
Conquistadors,
And more.
more. Yes.
And whatever the hell Descend is.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll try to
We'll
figure
find
those things
out.
out today.
There's so many new mechanics in the set. There's a lot of new stuff to talk about, and we have too many cards to talk about, so we're just going to dive right in.
We're talking about just cEDH cards, just cards that we think will see play in popular-ish cEDH decks.
Yeah, these have a chance of seeing play in cEDH.
Yeah, will see play is a strong.
I guess you might be right. There's a few cards on this list that will see play.
Yeah.
And
The
then some
longer
others.
we talk about them, the more of a chance it has of seeing play.
That's true.
Or the funnier they are.
okay.
That's also true.
Should we continue to explain what we're going to do, or should we jump in?
Jump right into it.
Come on, Vamonos, everybody, let's go. We're going to start off with...
Oh, if you want to pause,
it's on the list.
do
I
you
have
want
it up. I have it
the
up
pronunciation
already.
guide? Okay.
I just paused.
Did you say
'cause the-
pronunciation guide?
There is a
first
pronunciation guide. We're gonna try hard as
everyone,
hell.
everyone who tuned in to watch me fuck up the names, like, you're gonna be really disappointed.
We're gonna give it our best shot.
First card we're gonna talk about is Pall, Thousandth Moon. This is a red and a white for a 1/2 legendary creature, human soldier. It says whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Pall.
This is an army in a can. I'm not sure how great the rate is, but I know Winota likes effects like this. It creates attackers that will trigger Winota. It seems in the ballpark, maybe. I'm not sure.
I was wondering why it cared about non-gnome creatures, but then I continued reading. It makes a lot of sense
It
now.
makes gnome creatures, which are non-human creatures that trigger Winota.
They look like golems in the art, though.
Outside of Winota, I'm not really sure it sees much play elsewhere. I don't know what other commanders are looking for this type of effect, and I'm not even sure if Winota needs another one of these or if this is a better rate than some of the other ones that already exist, but it seems close.
All right, the next card we're going to talk about is Balom Del Presido.
This is the vampire, right?
This is the vampire, yeah. This is a white and a black for a 2/1 vampire legendary creature knight. That's jumbled, but you get the point. You can sacrifice another creature or artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on him.
It's a sack outlet in the command zone in Orzhov, which we haven't had before.
No, we haven't. We've
that's
only
something.
had the other side of combo activators
Right.
with like a blood artist effect, as in Elias Olcor.
Yeah.
This time we have the flip side, the enabler.
I'm not exactly sure what this is going to do, but probably be part of a combo piece if it's used in a cEDH capacity. I'm not sure.
The normal rate that you want for your sacrifice outlets is 1.
Yeah.
So this is twice that, but being able to put it in the command zone is very different. I saw a friend, Chen, was trying to put together like a stacks list where the idea was that you can sacrifice the stacks to it to get out from under it.
Yeah.
That's kinda
There's
nice.
maybe something to that. I'm not sure that it's stronger than other stacks options,
Yeah.
but there's definitely a space there, and having access to a powerful thing that many combos need in the command zone is pretty good.
The other cards that are tickling my brain for this are the Rectors, Academy Rector and Arena Rector.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like a specific line, a specific enchantment that you want in black, white. Humility is, again, the first thing I think
Yeah.
of, but
okay.
the only problem with this is that it doesn't break parity on humility the way that like Ishai and Tevish do specifically. But if you're already ahead and can continuously, like if you have another advantage piece in play, like finding humility on a whim or finding some other kind of maybe Necropotence.
Yeah.
Maybe go find Necropotence or something. Go for like a big win after that.
Yeah, that could be something.
That could be something.
I'm
yeah.
seeing where you're going with that. I like that.
That's just a cool thought.
Yeah,
Cool thought
nice
that I was
thought.
having. Yeah.
And vampires are sweet.
Vampires are dope. Yeah.
There's so many good vampires that are going in my casual Edgar deck. I wish we could talk about them today, but they're just good in a casual
We would have
vampire
to do
sense,
a whole separate podcast that's just new cards for Edgar.
which we could do. We could do it.
we could.
Let's talk about cEDH cards.
All right, yeah, let's go back. Let's talk about some pirates, because this is another creature type that's just getting more inflated this
Did
set.
I didn't say pirates in the beginning. I knew there was a fourth one, right?
I thought you did say
No,
pirates.
I said vampires, dinosaurs, merfolk,
And
I
pirates.
didn't say pirates. That's the fourth one.
Yeah, Long John Silver.
Okay. Which pirate is this that we're talking about?
Well, not him. We're going to talk about Breaches instead. This is Breaches Eager Pillager. This is 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary goblin pirate. It's got first strike, and whenever a pirate you control attacks, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You can either create a treasure token, have target creature unable to block this turn, or exile the top card of your library and you can play it this turn.
Yeah, this one's really strong. This is basically like Malcolm Plus, except without the flying. There's a little bit more options, and you don't have multiple colors in your command zone like you would with Malcolm. But this does something similar to what other cEDH cards are looking to do. The fact that it has several different things. You can go for card advantage or mana if you need it. It works with other pirates, right? So if you're playing a Malcolm deck, maybe this goes in the 99.
I'm thinking that like the blue-red pirates decks, or really just the blue-red Malcolm decks in general, are just going to want to start to sway towards pirates the more and more like really good value engines they get like this. And correct me if I'm wrong, is this like whenever a pirate attacks? So if you attack with Malcolm and this, you can select 2 of the abilities, right?
How is it worded?
Yeah, whenever a pirate you control attacks. So yeah,
that's pretty great.
Each pirate will get its own trigger.
So
Yeah.
if you have Ragavan in play, in addition to those other 2 cards we mentioned,
Yep.
bada bing, bada boom, you can get all 3 of these triggers now.
Yeah, that's true. Once enough synergies like this builds up where these cards are like good on their own but still really work well with other cards you already want to play, we might be getting to a point where like a pirate deck is actually like for real good in cEDH with many pirates in it. Because right now the pirate deck I feel like has like 2 or 3.
I think there's a pretty reasonable chance this will see play in Malcolm Kedis, like just the
sure.
2-color Malcolm lists.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
kinda where
sure
my
where
brain
else
went.
it slots in like easily, but at least that deck, I think it's probably worth a try.
Yeah, I wonder if Malcolm Tana, I know that's a deck that sees some play. That's like a Teamer Pirates deck. I wonder if that one plays this. I feel like any Malcolm deck, I would be looking at this card, this new Breaches.
I mean, between like Linthorn Buccaneer and Dockside Extortionist, like there's at least 4 pirates. This is the 5th pirate in your deck, so you could probably pretty consistently trigger more than one of these abilities when you go to attack.
And there's a couple of 1-mana ones with flying that are not half bad that you could also include
Yo,
that give you
true.
extra triggers.
Siren
so,
Stormtamer.
Yep, bingo. So I think this one's good.
Dauntless Dismantler is 1 and a white for a 1/4 human artificer. It has 2 abilities that say artifacts your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and you can play X, and a white and sacrifice it to destroy each artifact with mana value X.
This card's good.
This is loaded.
This is the first one I think we know is going to see play in many decks, not just one. The fact that it does the most important part of blind obedience, particularly when it comes to having your opponent's treasures come in tapped, which makes winning turns very difficult, shuts down a couple other things incidentally as well, and then also has the ability to kill problem artifacts. Very strong.
Yeah, this is Blind Obedience plus Meltdown on a 1/4 body that can block Najeela and Timna, that can attack for Timna. This card's great. I'm definitely going to put in probably most of my white decks for now. It's going to be like an auto staple until it's proven bad to me, but I don't think it's going to be proven bad.
There's a surprisingly large amount of decks that are trying to loop artifacts as part of their win condition, so having access to a card like this is absolutely perfect.
I mean, I'm playing Bloodpot and Tivit right now, and I'm definitely playing it in both of those ones. Any deck that's looking to be just a little bit mid-rangey to controlling, if you're not turbo, and if you're in white, you're probably not turbo. This is going for me.
I don't know if Blue Farm finds room for this, but the slower Blue Farm gets, the more appealing this is.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that Blue
I
Farm.
don't think it's on blind obedience, so I think it probably doesn't have a slot for this.
Yeah, but it's close. I mean, I wouldn't fault you for giving it a shot in Blue Farm, honestly, just seeing what it's like.
It's arguably better than Blind Obedience, because
Definitely.
Blind Obedience doesn't get in for damage and cards in Blue Farm.
And the destroying part, like that's real.
That's real.
Yeah,
I mean, you have a lot of 0 mana artifacts that you're
guess.
using for more mana, especially because you're in color combinations that don't have access to Carpet of Flowers or like other ways to make mana besides your artifacts. So I don't know how much like you want to keep destroying things, but just like shutting off other people's access to Mana Vault and their loops.
Yeah,
I
Kinda
mean,
nice.
you sacrifice it to do that, so you get to destroy things once.
only one time.
Yeah, but it only takes one time for your mana vault to get, or your mana crypt to get destroyed for you to not have it anymore. So.
Yeah. I think relative to Blind Obedience, it's worth saying that Blind Obedience is easier to interact with on the stack, but this is easier to interact with on the board. Like this, someone with a Bowmasters who is determined can like kill this thing or something like that.
Very determined. That
determined.
4 toughness is gonna be very seen.
I fucking applaud them if they need to get rid of this instead of something else at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, but either way, great card, I think.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Here's a bonkers card. This is Galta Stampede Tyrant. This is 5 and 3 green for a 12/12 Elder Legendary Dinosaur. It is trample, and when it enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. This is just a one-sided Necrogenesis. What's the name of that card?
I don't know what that card is, but I need
Hypergenesis.
Hypergenesis.
That's the card.
I feel like we need Tyler to explain why he's probably not putting this card in Kinnan, even though I want him to.
There is no chance I will even test it. No chance whatsoever. I don't think it's good.
It's not good. Yeah, it's just you're not going to have enough of them in your hand to make it worth it.
Yeah, flipping into it like means if you're trying to flip into it in Kinnan means that you're just hoping that you have the big creatures in your hand, which you actively don't want the rest of the time. So like many Kinnan lists are still on Brainstorm and stuff like that in order to get the creatures back out of your hand, where you don't want them until you have a ton of mana. And doing nothing else impactful to the board, nothing that slows your opponents down, it's a risk. I think it's a very high variance card, and like the ceiling is really high. If you have a hand packed with giant creatures, that's the moment for it. Like there you go. But a lot of the time, it can just do nothing and be a huge body, and that is just an unacceptable floor.
Yeah, it sucks in Kinnan, but it seems great in Selvala. Like,
sure.
My thought is that with Selvala in play, like you play something else that gets you to draw a bunch of cards. Like let's say you have a Life's Legacy or something. You sacrifice Lupine Prototype or whatever. You slam this thing down then with Selvala mana, and then now all of a sudden all the cards that you just drew off of your big draw spell, now you just get into play in addition to all this other stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like the point of Selvala is kind of that you get into loops where you're just going to be able to make all the mana you need anyway. So like being able to play this stuff for free from your hand, I'm not sure that's as strong as it sounds like on paper, but I think it's an interesting use case in Selvala as a deck where it might be worth trying out.
It seems like just one of those things that you just like an Underworld Breach line for a mono green deck where you just now piece together like 2 untap triggers on the stack. You're using Selvala. It draws you, I guess, only 1 card at that point, but you can still make like additional mana then at that point, and it gets 12 power. So
I just want to clarify also that when this enters, you can put any number of creatures. Is that what it says?
Any number of them.
Any number of creatures. So I am not sure what this card does yet. I don't know if it goes in Selvala. I don't think it goes in Kinnan, but that feels very broken to me. Any number of creatures from your hand feels breakable. I'm not sure how, but if any of these decks that try to accumulate 30 cards in their hand like Selvala can, I guess Selvala doesn't draw a big clumps like that, but any decks that are looking to do that, this lets you like just cast the one thing and then dump everything out. I don't know what this card does, but the fact that it says any number, that feels like it's breakable somehow.
It's a shame that in theory the best thing you could do with it is have a giant Adnaz hand, have something to discard it to and reanimate it, but it costs 8, so you'll never put it in an Adnaz deck.
Right, yeah, exactly. It needs to be some type of like creature-based, like pretend Ad Nauseam deck that does something like Ad Nauseam, maybe like with the power draw effects, and then dumps everything in. I don't know.
Let's talk about a blue card now. This is Kite Sail Larcenist. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human creature pirate. I don't know why, but I keep putting the type of card it is in the middle of the creature type.
Human creature pirate.
Human creature pirate, yeah. This is flying in Ward 1, something you'll forget all the time. And when it enters the battlefield, for each player, choose up to 1 other target artifact or creature that player controls for as long as Kite Sail Larcenist remains on the battlefield. The chosen permanent become treasure artifacts with the treasure text and lose all other abilities.
Yeah, dude, this card is kind of interesting. One, this kind of acts as removal for 3 things, right? 3 different players if you wanted to, sort of. It can kind of get rid of commanders. I mean, they can just sacrifice their commander for a treasure and then recast it, but still, it's like, I think, a good way to...
That's bad for them. That's horrible for them.
Right, yeah. And it's also important to note that you can like target your own things too. So you can target a Grim Monolith or a Mana Vault that you're not using anymore and just get some of the mana back and turn it into a treasure. I think that's pretty great. This card does a lot of little things pretty well at a kind of an expensive mana. 3 mana for removal is a lot. And to only get rid of 3 things for that amount of mana, like normally your Toxic Deluges are getting rid of 10 things. Your other removal spells that are 3 mana that get rid of a lot of stuff are getting rid of a ton. Fire Covenant, that'll get rid of a ton of stuff. Or this one as much, but this is on a flying body, right?
This is a flyer, a 2/3 flyer.
Yeah, so you can make use of this with Timna and other shit like that. A lot of little small synergies. I like this one a lot.
I was going to say that, like, specifically because it's not 1-for-1 removal and it effectively does hit all of your opponents, it is effectively 1-for-1 removal in cEDH for that reason, which is really the bare minimum of something that you want to see.
Probably the most salient thing here is that it hits the One Ring, which is indestructible and otherwise very hard to interact with.
I didn't even think about that.
Neither did I.
That's
I'm glad
great.
we have Tyler here
That's
today.
very important. Yeah,
Probably the
wow.
most important part of the group.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly.
That card's annoying.
I don't know if you have seen, probably at this point, you've seen our most recent video with Kevin, our game 2. It's the one where we all had the ring out by turn 3, and it was fucking insane. You'll understand exactly how important it is to have ways to get the ring off the battlefield.
So Kaito Larcenist actually, I think, has a pretty good chance of seeing play in, like, Malcolm Timna decks. It's another pirate, right? So this just also goes into your 2-color Malcolm decks that we were just talking about, and is actually like a real pirate that could do real things.
I am bummed that it's a human, though, I have to say. No Kinnan flips on this one.
Yeah. Would you play it if it was a non-human in Kinnan?
As it is now, I think I'm not going to run it at first and wait to see what other people say about it, and then I'll consider adding it in. If it was a non-human, I would probably be testing it myself.
That's how I test 99% of cards, is see what other people say about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with what I know.
I'm going to agree with people who I value their opinions.
All right, so the next card we're going to talk about is Cutsil. Cutsil Malamet Explorer. Exemplar. That's a real word, and I didn't even know that one. So this is a green and a white for a 3/3 legendary creature cat warrior. It says your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Bingo.
That's a wee-woo, we got something.
Yep. Oh, don't just you wait, because whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card.
That part feels less relevant, but the first part, a Grand Abolisher for 3 mana, feels very relevant. I love that.
A Grand Abolisher that's going to incidentally draw you cards if you are also playing like Noble Hierarch for Exalted or something like that.
Yep.
Like, there's going to be ways that it's going to be easy for you to get in sometimes.
It's not going to happen much, but sometimes.
Since you said Grand Abolisher, let's make sure we cover the ways in which this is not Grand Abolisher, because it does not turn your opponents off from abilities. They can activate abilities of whatever the hell they like. So this is not the total lockdown that Grand Abolisher is, where the only thing they can do is activate abilities of lands, basically.
It's just actual silence on it for your turn.
This is just silence, can't cast spells. So that is the main difference, apart from it also being 3 mana.
I do wonder about it as a commander, though. Like, I don't know if we've had this type of effect in the command zone before, and the fact that it can also draw cards is kind of interesting for like a stacks deck that's looking to just like stacks out the board but want to make sure all of my stacks pieces resolves, and then you can afford to play like 5 to 10 things that will boost your power, which will also help you kill your opponents, which is great. This might be one of those commanders that like tricks you into playing good Magic by just the way that it is constructed. It tells you to play the game in a good way. So I'm interested to see what that looks like.
So right now, all of my decks that play white, for like 95% of the time, I'm auto-including Grand Abolisher, Ranger Captain of Eos, and Silence into all of my white decks.
Definitely.
In the decks that can also play Cutsil, is this an auto-include in those decks because of this ability? Or is this something that, because of the mana cost and the fact that it doesn't grab Esper Sentinel specifically?
Yeah, I wouldn't play this in Blood Pod, which is the only comparison I have right now where I could play this, and I don't think I will. It is close, but for 3 mana, I need the thing to be very impactful, and I don't know that. I'm also not playing Grand Abolisher in Blood Pod because you just there's Vexing Shusher and there's other things. It's not that type of deck. I'm not looking to explode on one turn. So I don't know, which is kind of, if it doesn't go in, like, what other deck would play it, I wonder.
Thrasios Bruce is like the best use case, because it is often trying to win with like a Dockside Loop type combo on its turn that it needs to defend, and because it's already very built for tutoring out creatures. So that I feel like that might be the best use case.
What about Rocco? Would Rocco be something you can tutor for when you want to? You'd probably tutor for Grand Abolisher first, but
Grand Abolisher or Ranger Captain, I would rather tutor for in any case, really.
Yeah.
Because Ranger Captain is nice that you can use it defensively on someone else's turn to stop them from winning too. This doesn't have any of that kind of tech.
What if you're in a deck where you're playing Intuition and you want to be able to find 3 creatures that have silence effects stapled onto them? So
now you can.
Now you can do that.
Right, but why do they need to be creatures? I mean, wouldn't you just find silence in Ranger Captain?
What if you know your opponent has a Swan Song? You know what I mean? So it can't can't be a silence. It has to be a creature that protects you.
They would have used the Swan Song on the intuition.
That is, you are true about
But
that.
something
that is true.
you have reanimate in your hand or something. Like there's going to
Something,
be
something.
reasons.
Yeah.
Like there's
This was such a big what if. Like
Yeah.
it's
very
good
so
that
far.
yeah. It's good that the white green decks have an option, a third option now for a creature that's better than Docin of the Falling Leaf, and I think that's all that matters.
That's true.
The mono green decks, I'm sorry, you still have to deal with that, but like at least the decks that were like begrudgingly running Docin might not have to do that anymore,
Yeah.
which is really good to see.
Ikra Krom still plays Docin last I checked and doesn't get to play this. But either way, we can move on. We've talked about this card too much.
I think it probably won't actually see play.
Let's talk about a card that might see play here. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 legendary creature Siren Pirate. What card is this? You have to guess the card because I didn't say the name.
This is a Malcolm. This is another Malcolm, right?
Yeah, this is Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel. Another pirate. Let's keep that in mind. Flash and flying. Whenever Malcolm deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it. Draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 4 or more chorus counters on Malcolm, you may cast the discarded card without paying its mana cost.
That is big apple or a carrot at the end of the stick. A lot of hoops you have to jump through. I saw a little bit of chatter about this card, which is kind of why I think we should talk about it, but I'm not sure that it's going to be that great.
So right now, the thing that I hate the most about it is that it has 1 toughness.
Yeah.
And how many times have I talked about not wanting to play value engines especially value engines that take 4 turns to do
Yeah.
something really cool?
5 turns because it doesn't have haste.
That's true.
Yeah,
5
5
turns.
To me, that's an
Technically 4, though.
eternity.
It does have
That's
flash.
an eternity. Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
That's an eternity.
Honestly, here's where I'm at with this. Like, if anyone was interested in running this, they would still be on Ledger Shredder. Like, if the draw discard was good enough of a thing just on its own. So
And
I
it
don't
is,
think
because
this
Ledger
is-
Shredder, I think, is still like a decently good card, especially in Underworld Breach decks.
What about as a commander? This one as a commander. Just like card selection, like a little Jace.
I don't think mono blue is that great, and it
Yeah.
has better options than this. I mean,
Yeah.
you can do better things in mono blue than just
Okay.
I can play my 2-mana commander, and then maybe on turn 2 I can loot once.
Right. And then on turn 3, I'll loot again. And then on turn 4, I'll loot again. And then on turn 5, I'll loot again. And on that time.
No, on turn 5 you will lose to someone else who is playing a better deck.
There. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I don't think that this is like a value engine that I'm actively looking for, except maybe in this blue-red Malcolm deck that we keep talking about. That could be really good if you just jam pirates and breaches in there, but
Maybe.
outside of that, like, I'm not really looking to replace anything in blue farm with this. As a commander, I think I like even Jace Varin's Prodigy a little bit better in mono blue, because at least it kind of does card advantage but works as like a pseudo combo piece with High Tide.
Okay, moving on.
The next card is Oare Ashel, Deepest Might. This is 2 and 2 red for a legendary creature god. It's a 4/4 with trample. It says if a red source you control would deal an amount of non-combat damage less than its power to an opponent, that source deals damage equal to Ohare's power instead. When Oare Ashel dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control, and it transforms into Temple of Power, which is a land that taps for red, and you can tap it for 2 and a red to transform it, activate it only if red sources you control dealt 4 or more non-combat damage this turn, and only as a sorcery. I'm fucking exhausted.
Holy wall
what
of
day
text.
is
Can we take a 5? Can we take a 5?
Yeah.
I need a cigarette.
I don't know if this card's even going to be that great, but I think we've gotten a lot of these like damage multiplier effects recently, and I'm kind of interested in this one. This makes cards like Electrickery for 2 mana deal 4 damage to each creature your opponent controls. It's pretty good.
It doesn't, because it's just to an opponent. So an Electrickery that's dealing damage to creatures, it won't do.
This
it
card
only works
stinks.
like if you're dealing non-combat damage to an opponent.
Stinks. I didn't know that. I take back what I said.
Yeah, this is just like trying to make Tor brand work in cEDH.
There's a lot of cards like Pin Drop and like End the Festivities that will deal 1 damage
Okay.
to each opponent. And then that way you can deal 4. So
Yeah,
like
maybe.
if you want to do burn, this is probably better than Torbrand, but let's move on.
If you want to do burn, play modern.
Yeah, there. Modern burn is good in modern. That was my sentence.
Yep, great.
And I'm
Okay.
sticking to it.
We're going to talk about Roaming Throne. This is a 4-mana artifact creature golem for a 4/4 with Ward 2. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, and it is the chosen creature type in addition to its other types.
Pirate.
Dwarf.
Goblin.
If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time.
Dockside. Dockside is what I'm thinking about this one. I'm not sure if that's great, but that's what I'm thinking about when I see this card.
I think a 4-mana card that is only being used as a Dockside doubler is a terrible plan.
You might be true.
I mean, if you use it as a, so once again, I'm going to say Malcolm Kedis, because if you are naming Pirate and you're in a Malcolm deck, then getting 2 treasures off your Malcolm hits, like, this is maybe appealing. I still think 4 is too much for this effect.
Yeah.
I don't think it will see play at 4 if this costs
No.
2 maybe, but like,
Does this help
This has a home in Magda big time and changes the game.
Okay.
Because this does effectively what like Academy Manufacturer and Zorn would do with Magda. Every time Magda triggers to make an artifact, you make an additional one.
Right, because it's not just enter the battlefield.
Exactly.
It's any trigger.
And it's an artifact dwarf. It comes in, names dwarf, it becomes a dwarf. So now it's your artifact
an
dwarf
artifact
to go
dwarf.
through your loop.
Yeah.
So now on its own, as you're going through the Magda loop, you're not only creating your tap treasure as you go through the loop, you are creating your untapped treasure already. This kind of changes the game in
You
got
got to put Magda back together.
I kind of want to. 'Cause
Yeah.
This is just a great piece that lets you take out like other dead cards now so that you can fit other good cards into the deck and make it even better.
And that ward too. We talk about how ward is impossible to remember ever, and that's definitely going to come up also.
Especially on like a combo piece, that's exactly
Yeah.
where you want to see ward. It's gonna feel like Tivit in that case. Then
Sure.
it's not, but I'm gonna use that analogy anyway.
Okay.
sick.
So Roaming Throne, definitely sick, and I think is definitely going to see play.
Niche
Maybe not
play
in
for
like
sure.
a ton of decks, but
in some.
the decks that it combos well with, it will see play in. Here's a card I'm not too sure about. This is Scythe Claw Raptor. This is 2 and a red for a 4/3 Dino. It says whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, it deals 4 damage to them.
Yeah.
Baby Bergthar, kind of.
Yeah, Baby
Yeah.
Bergthar, kind of. I was close on this card. I misread it at first. If it wasn't specified to just on not their turn, I think this would obviously be much better, but I don't know. It's close to this burn type of effect.
If you're in mono red and you need like a silence effect, like there's going to be times where players are going to get precariously low and they're not going to want to Chain of Vapor your thing for value. And this kind of gets you into those points, but we've seen a lot of cards that like will deal damage to an opponent whenever they cast a spell or like mana barbs kind of stuff. And unless you're playing like Ob Nixilis, Captive Kingpin, those cards aren't really winning cEDH games.
Yeah, we're in just like worse than defense grid territory.
Yeah, I think if you have like enough of these, and you're threatening to deal 8 to 10 damage to your opponents whenever they cast a spell, now we're talking about something real. But you got to be playing a slow ass stack to be there. And I don't know if that's where you are.
Yeah, I don't know if this deck exists yet, but if that type of deck were ever to become good, like a group slug style of low color red deck that would just deal a whole bunch of damage anytime anyone did anything, this card is probably in that deck. I just don't think that a deck exists yet, but if it gets enough pieces, maybe one day?
Raga Draga?
Maybe Raga Draga.
I don't know how real Raga Draga is, but I keep seeing people trying it out, so
Maybe.
that's a beatdown deck, I think.
It's a card that I'm going to look at and then think about for later, but not right now.
Let's talk about the ancient one too, or Sleepy Sam, if you will. This is a blue and a black for an 8/8 legendary creature, Spirit God. It has Descend 8, which says the ancient one can't attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. That's what Descend is, based on your permanent cards and graveyard number. It also, for 2, a blue and a black, lets you draw a card, then discard a card. And when you discard a card this way, target player mills cards equal to its mana value. So guess what this does?
Is an infinite mana outlet that mills out your opponents? Is that
Yeah,
what we're
with
looking at?
Dramatic Scepter, yeah.
Just like 100 other Dimir commanders.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like sort of worthwhile that you're discarding cards, so like you have access to do reanimator stuff with it, sort of. But I still think this is probably just kind of a niche deck.
It's a Dimir deck, so it'll win games, but there's other Dimir cards that will win more games, like Talion and Nimris and things like that. But I think it's in the conversation, like it does things that you like to see. And if there's a way to abuse that big power in Dimir colors in the future, which I think there is a card from this set that does that, an artifact, and I don't think it's on our list.
That does what?
That it when it enters, it works with Dargo. It like draw cards equals to power or something. It's a 3-mana artifact. Sorry, that's a little bit of a side. I'll try to find that in a second. But if there are cards that work well with the high 8/8 power or toughness of this card, those cards could be used in this deck.
Let's talk about the final creature. This is Tishana's Tidebinder. This is 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Wizard with Flash. And when it enters the battlefield, Counter up to one target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. For clarity, mana abilities can't be targeted.
I don't think this card is very good, but it does stop Dockside and Thassa's Oracle, so we should talk about it.
The reason why I thought about it was because it triggers Nimrus and it prevents them from having that ability. So like if you stop Kenrith or Emil or something like that, you can stop them from getting multiple effects that they would normally generate.
Yeah, it does a decent amount. 3 mana for this effect. I would just rather cast a mana drain or a 2 mana hard counter spell that'd be able to stop anything.
Probably 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess most of the upside is being able to turn off the ability for the rest of the turn. So I just wish it cost 1 less mana, was an instant, and had split second.
Yeah.
And then it would be called Trickbind.
And then it would be called Trickbind, and it would
And
still
then
not
we
see
would
play.
already have that, and we wouldn't play it.
And Stifle already exists also. I don't think Stifle is very good.
Really, any of these counter and activated ability kind of things or a triggered ability, I'm not into.
I think it's a trap. It looks very appealing because it stops some of the main things in the format, but that's all it does. And by the time a lot of those things are being put onto the stack, there's a ton of backup, and that's not the thing that you want to be stopping. You want to be interacting before it gets to this point most of the time.
Helping Hand is a white mana for a sorcery that says return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. White has Unearth?
Unearth.
Yeah.
This is white Unearth without the cycling, which was not the important part of the card anyway. Just reanimates the Dockside.
That's great.
We haven't had this rate on a card ever in white, so that's awesome.
So now like a Thrasios Brews deck could do that, or anything in those kind of colors. I don't think Thrasios Brews wants this, but
maybe Spellseeker can use this card in some type of line or something.
That's
I'm
a
not
good
sure.
point, yeah.
You know what I mean? But something maybe. I know Anala uses that effect. You're not playing white in Anala, but maybe.
Molten Collapse is a red and a black for a sorcery that says choose one, but if you've descended this turn, you can choose both. By the way, if you've descended, or you have descended, if a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less.
To be honest, I'm not positive this will see play in our format. There's probably better options. I do think this card might see play in some other formats. It's going to be a 2-for-1 a lot of the time. If you fetch, this is going to be a 2-for-1. If you discard a permanent in any way, it's not just from the battlefield. If the permanent goes from anywhere, that's nice. Being able to kill a Soul Ring and Winota or something like that might be relevant.
Usually the first thing that you target's really good, and the second thing that you target is just incidental throwaway value.
Yeah.
We've talked about a couple of these red-black removal spells over the years, and none of them really get very far, but they're just kind of nice options to have in case you do need some sort of value.
Yeah, I think your stuff that's going to be single target removal still has to cost 1. That's just where we're at.
Yeah, or be Assassin's Trophy, be able to hit anything no matter what.
Yeah.
Maybe Abrupt Decay, I think, is also close.
Well, the
but
timing's
besides that, I
really
agree.
bad for the next 2 cards that we're going to talk about then, because they are both removal spells that are nowhere near as good as those things.
Okay.
Bitter Triumph is 1 and a black for an instant that says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, discard a card or pay 3 life. This destroys either a creature or a planeswalker.
This is, I think, a better Infernal Grasp. I just think this is probably the best terror at 2 mana that we've ever gotten. Destroys a creature or a planeswalker for the cost of 3 life, which is mostly relevant. Or maybe you can like discard a Razaketh or a Vilis or a World Gorger or something as
You're
part
flooding
of it.
some extra lands.
Something like that. I don't think a lot of decks are going to want it, but this is the best rate that I've seen for this effect yet, so maybe some decks will.
Giving you the choice of life or the discard is really what pushes this over the top.
Yeah, if you're in a play group where all 3 of your friends are constantly playing 3 mana to say, then probably run this card. Otherwise, don't.
Okay, fair enough.
Get Lost is the next removal spell. This is 1 and a white for an instant that destroys a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker, and its controller creates 2 maps. And a map is an artifact with 1 and tap and sack it to have target creature explore at sorcery speed.
And explore is they look at the top card of the library, and if it's a land, they can put it in their hand or keep it there.
I think you have to
to
draw
put it. You have to keep it there.
It goes to the battlefield, doesn't it?
No.
No.
It goes to hand?
It goes to hand.
Yeah.
And then if it's not a land, you can surveil, basically.
Leave it or put it in graveyard.
Leave it or put it in the graveyard, and then you get a +1/+1 counter on the creature also if you don't take the land.
And a +1/+1 counter is a counter that I'm just kidding.
So many fucking things.
I know the reminder text on this card. It's the initial italics, and then there's smaller italics, and then there's smaller italics, and then it explains what power and toughness is.
Yeah, this card is after all that probably not even good. This is just an interesting rate. This is another one that we haven't had something like this in white before. I don't think at this rate, creature or enchantment for 2 mana.
It's funny because like the 1 mana options only get rid of creatures. The 3 mana option was Generous Gift that got rid of everything, and now there's a 2 mana option that only gets rid of 3 kinds of things.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just kind of funny.
Maybe monocolor decks, maybe mono white deck might want this. Probably not.
Let's talk about our first Jurassic Park card here. This is Permission Denied, featuring Samuel L. Jackson. Is that Wayne Knight that's also on this card?
It's Newman. Is Newman
Wayne
Knight?
Knight is Newman.
Yes.
Yeah,
it is.
That's cool. For a blue and a white, you may cast this instant to counter target non-creature spell, and your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. Oh, it's non-creatures. I thought it was just they can't cast spells.
It's not
like
even
it was
that good.
actually silence stapled to this? No.
I love the flavor text. That's what it is, right?
Oh, yeah. You didn't say the magic word.
This card is a stinker. I think it's trap. It's so close.
It's a trap card.
Trap.
If we were playing Yu-Gi-Oh, it would be purple and it would be a trap.
I think I like Dovin's Veto more than this.
A lot more than this,
and
actually.
I don't like Dovin's Veto.
The problem is that normally what you want to counter is like the final thing, like the nail in the coffin for that deck. So when you get rid of it, now it doesn't matter that they can't cast any more non-creatures because you've already stopped them.
Yes, there will be situations where you can like get them, and by get them I mean like, so say they have Ad Nauseam and they cast the Mana Crypt and you counter the Mana Crypt and then they can't cast the Ad Nauseam afterwards, but like you would just rather have a 1 mana spell that could just counter the Ad Nauseam instead. So the moments where you'll be able to feel smart and get them, you'd probably just be able to, you should be able to just do something else and better if it was a better card, right?
Yeah, and as we've said, like the whole your opponents can't cast non-creature spells, like that only works if it resolves, and if it resolves, then you've already countered the thing, so it's unlikely to matter in those instances, and that part of it also gets countered along with the rest of the spell if they have an answer. Yeah. So you'd rather just be spending the 1 mana and hoping you have another piece of interaction.
I think 100% of the time I would just rather play Dovin's Veto, and I'm not at the point where I want to play Dovin's Veto anymore.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
All right, we're going to move into the artifacts then. Let's talk about this Altar of the Wretched thing here. I've never seen this card before.
Okay, yeah, excellent.
This is 2 and a black for that's the sign of a good content creator. This Altar of the Wretched is 2 and a black for an artifact that says when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, draw X cards, then mill X cards, where X is that creature's power. You can craft with 1 or more creatures for 2 and 2 black. Whatever that is.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yep.
There's still more text.
And then for 2 and a black, you can return it from your graveyard to your hand.
Why would they do that?
There's no reminder text about what craft is.
What is the craft has a number next to it, right?
You can,
for
it
2
has a
and 2
cost
black.
next to it.
Yeah.
So you craft it by sacrificing whatever it tells you to sacrifice and paying that cost.
The thing that I don't like, before I even get to the back of this card, because there's
still more
the
text,
craft
by the way.
means flip it into something else. What I don't like when they do cards like this is because this is a new set. For some reason, there's so many new mechanics in the set. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like there are more than the normal amount of new mechanics in the set, because I am between maps, the Cascade one, the permanence, the permanence in graveyard one that we just talked about, Descend. Those two sound way too similar.
That's true, actually.
And now the craft.
I think it's just 4, and normally new sets do get 4 mechanics, but these are all like big, lengthy, paragraph long mechanics. Like normally the mechanics are like tap to put a +1/+1 counter on the creature, like Outlast. You know what I mean? Like they're very easy to understand.
And like, is Explore evergreen now? Because like we're not getting that reminder text anywhere, and that's
don't
when
they refer to
Explore?
doesn't that fall in the bucket of like deciduous mechanics? Is that what they call them?
I think so. That they can come back, but they're not all the time.
Yeah, but not. I guess most of the time they don't.
Explore is an interesting one because it has so many actions, and for some reason I also can't remember all of them all the time because Explore is so many different things in its own right.
You know, maybe I shouldn't complain because way back in the day, they didn't explain banding well on the card, so maybe I don't need to know everything that it does on the card.
We'll get there together with power of teamwork and friendship. But can we talk about the back of this card also? Because I've already forgotten what the front side of it does.
Yeah, sure. So it flips into a Wretched Bone Mass, which is a skeleton horror whose power and toughness are equal to the total power of exiled cards used to craft it. All right, we got a couple clues.
Okay.
We got a couple clues.
Oh, so you can just exile whatever you want to craft it, I guess.
Well, whatever you need.
The front
cards
side
to
is
craft
the good part of this card. You're sacrificing a Dargo and you're drawing 7 cards. That's what we want to be doing. With Lion's Eye Diamond, I believe, what's the activation ability? What's the cost in the front to return from your graveyard to your hand?
It is 2 and a black.
It's 2 and a black. Look at that. Isn't that great? So with Lion's Eye Diamond, you can like return it back to your hand with that ability. Maybe if you have one other piece like Bergie or something like that, so you can loop Dargo and you can keep on going, milling yourself and drawing 7, and eventually you'll find like Underbleach or something. It does a lot of things that Dargo is already trying to do. I think this will see play in Black Red
like
Dargo decks.
Ichor Dargo decks.
Ichor Dargo,
yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to go down exactly 100% as you're saying it.
No, it
but
won't. Sometimes it definitely won't, but sometimes it could. The fact that that's like such an easy combo that you can like interchange things that you're already playing in that deck.
I think like if you have a way to bring Dargo, actually no, because Dargo you just go back to your command zone very easily. So if you have a way to do this with, I don't know what I'm thinking. You need something to make red mana,
like
is
a
the
Bergie
thing.
or like a Phyrexian. Because you have to sacrifice like a Bergie would do, because every time
Bergie
you
would do
cast the
great,
Dargo,
yeah.
you'd make the red mana, and then the sacrificing would pay for the 2 each time, so you'd be able to kind of loop through.
Well, it brings it back to your hand, so you still need more mana
No,
to
not
be able
even
to
that
play
part.
it.
Yeah, that's true. You'd still need to line.
You'd be able to loot. Yeah, you would need the LED, but you would also need a breach. And if you already have LED and breach, like maybe you don't need this.
This can help you find those pieces and then continue to use them because of the draw 7.
If you have the altars in play, that can also help you like just keep sacrificing Dargos to make more mana. So there's a lot of pieces that you need to have this be a loop, but it doesn't need to loop to be good. Like you can even just one activation to draw 7, mill 7 is just, that's going to feel like your brain freeze in your Jund Dargo deck, and that's going to feel really good.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Brass's Tunnel Grinder is 2 and a red for a legendary artifact that says when it enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. And at the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a boar counter on it. And if there are 3 or more boar counters on it, remove the counters on it and transform it. And it transforms into a land that taps for red mana and says whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by this land, Tectalon, I think that's how you pronounce it, you get to discover X, where X is that spell's mana value.
Discover is basically Cascade, except you have the ability to, instead of casting the spell, put it into your hand, and then the number value afterwards is an X, so it's whatever the mana value is, it's that or less.
So it's supposed to be fixed, but it sounds like a more broken one, because if you flip into a counter spell, you don't have to go, oops, I lose it.
I think it is a more powerful Cascade most of the time. Depending on that value number afterwards, I think it is a more powerful Cascade.
Probably.
Yeah.
In general, I think the ability is a more powerful Cascade.
This card, I'm not positive on. In low color red decks, maybe anything that can flicker stuff with like a meal. I don't know if you'd want to. This card just seems like it does a lot. It kind of draws you cards. It can get stuff into the graveyard. It can turn into a land. It can do a couple different things. I don't know.
It is card advantage.
I think if this card was good, it would be just about the first part because the boar counters, like you have to get to 3, which is a big ask, and it's once per turn, so you're talking about 3 turns. And what I don't think sees a lot of play is Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, which is a land that has a flip side that does exactly this for exactly this mana cost. So I think since we don't see that, we're not going to see this.
Unless you're looking for an MDFC style situation, I think this is better than that.
I wonder if you're playing like a Reanimator style deck, if this is just like a more expensive Faithless Looting that's a little bit thicker. Maybe that's the kind of effect that you're looking for. It's just like a little bit of a thicker Faithless Looting.
Yeah, by thicker, you mean 3 times as much mana.
Exactly.
Well,
3
like
Cs.
a flashbacked Faithless Looting, which you're doing sometimes.
all the time.
I wish the boar counters were like pigs.
Okay.
That'd be nice. Pigs in a tunnel.
Is that from something?
Pigs in a blanket. like the little hot dogs.
Don't you think
Yes.
about pigs and tunnels a lot?
No, I think about pigs in a
No,
blanket.
I think about pigs and blankets consistently.
Pigs and blankets can also be in tunnels.
That's true.
Chamil, the Inner Sun, is a 6-mana legendary artifact that says spells can't be countered, and at the beginning of your end step, discover 5.
It says spells you control can't be countered, which is much better than spells can't be countered.
That is
Yeah.
very true. I don't know what deck wants this. Some big artifact stacks list. This card seems like it's just like a win condition that protects your stuff. Over time, it generates so much value. I don't know. Is it something? Does Magda want it?
I think I've come to terms with Magda not wanting it. Because nobody's countering your Magda activations anyway.
You're not casting spells when you're trying to win.
No, the only 2 cards that are considered counterable are Magda and Dockside Extortionist, and everything else after that point, you don't need to cast.
And it's 6 mana, right?
It is 6 mana.
You're not going to cast it for 6 mana and then cast the Magda. Like, you want to have the option to find this, and then after you find it, you don't need the part that's good.
That's the thing. Like, I want it as something that Magda can go get for value, but I don't know a scenario where I wouldn't just rather have Portal to Phyrexia or any of the other ones that you're already playing.
Close, but no cigar, I think.
I
for
think
me.
that's where this card comes down.
Yeah,
Close.
I would say so.
Yeah, but maybe some weirdo deck would use this and it'd be great in. I just don't know what that deck is.
Maybe more like Arkham Dagson, because that one, like, you can go get the specific artifact you need, but that one doesn't. That one still needs to like cast spells after it goes and gets its impactful artifact. So I think maybe in like those kind of niche big artifact decks.
Yeah, I could see that.
The Grixis Mishra, if that ever becomes a more popular thing.
What
Yeah.
about like Paco and Halden if you're taking a bunch of turns and you get more of that Discoverer, like more
Yeah.
end steps? I don't know. I feel like you want just another extra turn spell instead of this. Man,
Fringe decks.
Fringe decks. Who cares?
Narset.
Who
This
cares?
thing can
Whatever.
also discover you into your extra turn
Nar-
spells, though, too. So
Narset, whatever. And
Yeah,
move
right.
on.
Dino DNA is 1 mana for an artifact that has imprint. For 1 and tap it, you can exile a creature card from a graveyard at sorcery speed. For 6 mana, you can also create a token that's a copy of target creature exiled with Dino DNA, except it's a 6/6 green dinosaur creature with trample, activate at sorcery speed. I should have just said it's also a colossal Dreadmaw, in addition to its other types.
It's a Dockside combo. It combos with Dockside if Dockside makes 7 and just mono red and beyond, which we don't have yet. Otherwise, we needed extra creatures before this with Cloudstone Curio and stuff like that in like very, very low colors. So that's neat.
The only thing I don't love is that Dockside's a lot harder to get into the graveyard and exile it than it is to work with and play. So you have to work a little bit harder.
That's true.
But if you gamble for Dockside and then pitch it into your graveyard, you just set up the combo really easily for
great.
yourself. So mono red infinite mana, here I come.
There we go.
Pretty few actual use cases, but high potential.
Maybe over time, the 6/6s that it makes will be relevant. Probably not, but maybe.
I will say this one and the Altar are both cards that I'm really excited for in Hensi, but
Ooh, okay, casual. Yeah, a lot of good casual cards in this set.
Yeah,
Holy hell, a lot
casual
of good
bangers,
casual
yeah.
cards.
but we don't play casual.
We don't play casual.
Make no
ever.
mistake.
Make
Never.
none.
I've never done it.
Dusk Rose Reliquary is a white mana for an artifact that says has an additional cost to cast the spell, sack an artifact or a creature. It has Ward 2, and when it enters the battlefield, exile an artifact or creature an opponent controls until Dusk Rose Reliquary leaves the battlefield.
Portable Hole sees a small amount of play in some Mardu decks and in Oswald decks. I think this is kind of similar. This is a 1 mana, catch a lot of stuff. Maybe you can use that sacrifice thing to your own ability, like for stuff that you want to happen.
Yeah, I think you have to want the sacrifice in order
Yeah.
to want this card. But
Well, I mean, even if you just want to get rid of a Grim Monolith or a Mana Vault too, like your mono white decks are playing that. So if you were playing the like Portable Hole, I think this is just better enough considering that it hits things no matter what their CMC is.
Yeah.
So as long as you are in a mono white scenario where you're okay sacking an artifact or a creature that's not getting you any real value anymore, maybe that's worth it, but you kind of need all the permanents you have access to in mono white.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I don't know. It's close, I think. Can we pause real quick? I just realized the vampire that makes tokens whenever someone plays a creature artifact. That was a creature. We should talk
Oh,
about
that's
that
a
one.
Winota card.
Charismatic Conqueror.
So this is 1 and a white for a vampire soldier. That's a 2/2. It's got vigilance, and whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent, and if they don't, you get a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink.
Creatures that are armies in cans are creatures that I'm looking for a lot of the time. I think Winota can use this. I think low color stacks decks might want to use this. I think this is going to come up a lot more often than it seems, like the ability for them to, they're not going to want to tap their thing. They're going to to want to use it so you can make a 1/1. It's going to happen a lot, and eventually those 1/1s are going to add up. I think this card's something.
I think if you're playing like a Tavesh style stack, this is probably where I want it. Like a deck that's already going to be playing Skull Clamp or something like that. I don't think I'm just going to throw this into any stack. I think the 3-mana Thalia, even at 1 mana more, is enough better with its utility and not giving your opponents a choice. Where I think in like a more true stack side deck, I want that. But if I want to play a Winota deck that wants to snowball a bunch of non-human creatures to give me triggers, I think I'm a little bit more interested in something like this.
I agree. I think you want to be able to use those 1/1s strongly. And if you can do that, then maybe this is an option.
Let's talk about our final card here. The only enchantment. This is Spelunking. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and then you may put a land card from your hand into play. If you put a cave onto the battlefield this way, you gain 4 life. And it says lands you control enter the battlefield untapped. Oh, this does something different than I thought it did.
So it's not very good.
It's terrible.
I saw what Gavin tweeted the other day. Like, I love cards that just say, like, explain the rules. Like, it just says lands enter the battlefield untapped.
Untapped, yeah.
They
that
do
is
that
nice.
normally. That's just what that's what lands do.
I thought this had lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped for some reason, but this does the opposite.
No, yeah.
The exact opposite of Root Maze and not a Root Maze thing.
Well, that's a good way to end the podcast, I think, on like a questionable mistake.
Does this
card.
not like overwrite things that say they enter tapped?
I think it would overwrite them. Yes,
That's the point,
Yeah,
right?
that's the point. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the point. I just think it's
yeah,
funny
that's why it's bad. Is because like
that,
that's
then you
still
have
not
to
good.
play tap
Yeah.
lands in your deck, and that sucks.
Cave is the 5th mechanic that they added
Oh,
here
that is-
too.
yeah.
I'm counting Cave as a mechanic because it's a new card type basically.
Not a new card type. It's a new subtype.
It's a new that's a type. That's still a type.
No, a card type is what Tarmogoyf cares about.
Yeah, but I put an apostrophe in front of when I said type. You just didn't see it. Like a type. Yeah.
A silent apostrophe.
A silent apostrophe.
No, I announced it.
It's just silent.
What sound does an
Yeah.
apostrophe make, Cameron?
Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so on Patreon, like our $100 patrons.
Mark Cirillo, Alan Button, lowercase, Zachary Nelson, She Doesn't Even Go Here, Joey Aaron, SoCal Acura, Stormageddon, Luke Cook, AJ Alwos AB, Kylock, Demon of Rosgrees, Uncle Butts, Kawaja A. Hamid, Lauren Connell, and Baby G-Bus.
If you'd like to pick up any merch, please go to playtowinmtg.com.
Another huge shout out to our sponsor, Dragon Shield. You can use the code PLAY2WIN5 at the affiliate link down below for 5% off to help support the show.
Check out our social media on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Twitter.
And listening. What?
Bye.
Tyler.
Malcraft, Focus Lamia, Jabaha, Dalton Poteet, Kadanis, Lutri's Dad, Mitchell Shepard, Justin Mansolo, Pedro, Jacob Depp, Michael Ballou, Jan Wildfang, Thomas Bueno, Swampy McGee, and David Nelson. I think I'm going to trim this down a little bit. We've been talking for a little while.
Yeah, there was a couple moments where you had to look for cards and shit.
Yeah.
Dude, I still want to know what that fucking noise was.
I just screamed, yeah.
It sounded so much like an old man.